I've always believed that success is best served quietly. In Silicon Valley, where everyone broadcasts their smallest achievement, I chose a different path. My name is David Chen, and this is the story of how keeping my success secret led to the most satisfying revelation of my life. 10 years ago, at 22, I left our family's prestigious consulting firm to pursue my dreams in tech. Another foolish youngster thinking they'll be the next Steve Jobs, my Uncle James had sneered. The entire Chen family thought I was throwing away a guaranteed future in our generations-old business. Chen Consulting Group was the pride of our family, a Fortune 500 company that had grown from my grandfather's small practice into a global powerhouse. Every Chen was expected to join after college, work their way up and maintain the legacy. Walking away was considered the ultimate betrayal. But I had a vision. While studying computer science at Stanford, I developed an AI-driven supply chain optimization system that could revolutionize how companies manage their operations. My professors saw its potential. My family saw only a naive kid's pipe dream. "Come back when you fail," Uncle James had said during our last family dinner. "Your position will be waiting, starting at the bottom, of course." I left without arguing, taking only my savings and my belief in what I could build. Silicon Valley was brutal for newcomers, but I had an advantage. I understood both technology and business, thanks to growing up in my family's corporate world. The first 2 years were hard. I lived in a tiny apartment, coded 18 hours a day and ate more ramen than I care to remember. But slowly, working under the radar, I built something extraordinary. Quantum Solutions was born, though not under my name. I'd learned from watching my family that attaching your name to something too early attracts the wrong kind of attention. So officially, Quantum Solutions was founded by a private investment group. I was listed simply as Chief Technical Officer, while the CEO position remained unnamed. It was easier to work without the spotlight. The technology worked better than even I had hoped. Our AI could predict supply chain disruptions months in advance, optimize inventory levels with unprecedented accuracy, and reduce operational costs by an average of 40%. Major companies started noticing. 5 years in, Quantum Solutions was valued at $2.3 billion. But outside a small circle of key employees and clients, no one knew I was the founder and CEO. My family still thought I was playing around with computers at some small tech startup. I maintained the illusion carefully. At family gatherings, I'd talk vaguely about working in tech. When they asked about my company, I'd mention being part of a promising startup. They stopped asking for details years ago, assuming I was too embarrassed to admit failure. Uncle James took particular pleasure in comparing me to my cousins who had joined the family firm. "Mark made partner last year," he'd announce proudly. Meanwhile, some people are still pretending to be entrepreneurs. The family would laugh and I would smile politely. What they didn't know was that Quantum Solutions had become the most sought-after supply chain technology in Silicon Valley. Companies were practically begging to work with us, including, though they didn't realize it, Chen Consulting Group's biggest client, Global Dynamics. Global Dynamics was a $50 billion manufacturing conglomerate that contributed nearly 30% of my family's firm's annual revenue. They were also, as of last month, in serious talks to implement Quantum Solutions technology across their entire operation. Which brings us to last week's family business meeting. Uncle James had called everyone together to discuss an exciting development. Global Dynamics was planning a major digital transformation of their supply chain systems. Chen Consulting Group would handle the implementation, a contract worth over $100 million. "This will be our largest project ever," Uncle James announced to the assembled family. "Everyone needs to be prepared to support this initiative." I sat quietly in the back, sipping my coffee. I already knew about the project. I'd been in private meetings with Global Dynamics CEO for months. They weren't just planning to transform their supply chain. They were planning to completely replace their existing systems with Quantum Solutions technology. "David," Uncle James called out, noticing my silence. "Since you think you know so much about technology, perhaps you'd like to share your expert opinion?" The sarcasm in his voice was thick. I looked around the room at my smirking relatives. My cousin Mark, the youngest partner, was practically gloating. Aunt Linda was shaking her head disapprovingly. Even my parents looked embarrassed by their unsuccessful son. "I think Global Dynamics is making a smart move," I said carefully. "Their current systems are outdated." "Oh, And what would you know about enterprise-level systems? Uncle James laughed. How's your little startup doing? Still trying to be a CEO? The room filled with poorly concealed chuckles. I smiled and stood up. Actually, I should get going. I have a meeting tomorrow morning. Running away again? Mark called out. You know, there's still time to join the family business. We could use someone to manage our IT department. More laughter. I picked up my jacket and headed for the door. David, Uncle James called after me. Stop pretending to be something you're not. It's time to grow up and admit you failed. I paused at the doorway, thinking about the email I'd received just that morning from Global Dynamics CEO. They were ready to move forward. All that was needed was my signature. The signature of Quantum Solutions CEO on the final contract. See you all soon, I said quietly and left. As I drove home in my deliberately modest car, a 5-year-old Toyota, while my cousins all drove luxury vehicles, I thought about what would happen next. Tomorrow morning, Global Dynamics would announce their partnership with Quantum Solutions. Tomorrow morning, my family would learn who really owned the company they'd be working with. Tomorrow morning, everything would change. The next morning, I arrived at Global Dynamics headquarters 30 minutes early. My assistant, Sarah, was already waiting with the final contracts and a knowing smile. Ready for the big reveal, boss? She asked, handing me my coffee, not the cheap diner brew I drank at family gatherings, but the premium roast I actually preferred. Just another meeting, I replied, though we both knew this was anything but ordinary. I'd chosen to dress simply, no flashy Silicon Valley CEO outfit, just a well-tailored navy suit that would look at home in any boardroom. The watch on my wrist, however, was my one concession to the moment, my grandfather's vintage Patek Philippe, a reminder of the legacy I'd honored in my own way. At precisely 9 a.m. the elevator doors opened, and out walked Uncle James, flanked by Mark and 2 other Chen Consulting partners. They strode into the lobby like they owned it, not even noticing me sitting quietly in the waiting area. Mr. Chen, the receptionist called out. Uncle James stepped forward automatically. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant David Chen? The look on Uncle James's face was priceless. He turned slowly, finally registering my presence. David? What are you doing here? Before I could answer, Thomas Wright, CEO of Global Dynamics, emerged from the conference room. David, there you are. We're all set for the final signing. He walked over and shook my hand warmly. The board is extremely excited about implementing Quantum's technology across our entire operation. Uncle James's face went from confusion to shock. Mark nearly dropped his briefcase. Shall we? Thomas gestured toward the conference room. Your team at Quantum has done incredible work on the integration plans. As we walked in, I caught a glimpse of my uncle's face in the glass reflection. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. The conference room was packed with executives, lawyers, and board members from both Global Dynamics and Quantum Solutions. Before we begin, Thomas addressed the room, I want to thank David Chen, founder and CEO of Quantum Solutions, for personally overseeing this partnership. His company's AI technology is going to revolutionize our entire supply chain. The sound of Uncle James choking on his water echoed through the room. Now, Thomas continued, we've asked Chen Consulting to handle the implementation, but of course, that's subject to your approval, David, since they'll be working with your systems. All eyes turned to me, including the stunned faces of my relatives. 10 years of dismissal and mockery hung in the air between us. Chen Consulting is an excellent firm, I said calmly. I should know, I grew up learning from them. If they're willing to work under Quantum's direction, I approve. Uncle James's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. Mark was frantically Googling on his phone, no doubt looking up Quantum Solutions and its mysteriously private CEO. The next hour was a blur of signatures and handshakes. The deal was massive, $500 million for the technology implementation, with Chen Consulting handling a $100 million portion under Quantum's supervision. Every time Uncle James had to acknowledge my authority over a contract point, he looked like he'd swallowed something sour. After the main signing, Thomas insisted on a celebratory lunch. As we headed to the executive dining room, Uncle James finally found his voice. Why didn't you tell us? He demanded, pulling me aside. All these years. Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. Or would you have tried to take control just like you do with everything else? He had no answer for that. The The story of my success spread through the family like wildfire. By dinner time, my phone was flooded with messages from relatives who'd suddenly remembered how much they'd always believed in me. Cousin Mark sent a rambling apology email. Aunt Linda called to ask if I was interested in speaking at her son's business school. My parents showed up at my office that evening. Unlike the others, they came not with demands or excuses, but with tears and genuine remorse. "We should have supported your dreams," my mother said softly. "We were so caught up in tradition that we couldn't see you were building something extraordinary." My father, always more reserved, simply hugged me. "Your grandfather would have been proud," he whispered. "He built his company his way just like you built yours." The next few months transformed both companies. Quantum Solutions' partnership with Global Dynamics made headlines in the tech world. Our valuation doubled. Chen Consulting had to adapt to working under my company's leadership, a change that Uncle James struggled with daily. I maintained my modest lifestyle, but I did make one significant purchase: my grandmother's old house in Palo Alto, which the family had sold years ago. I restored it to its original condition, adding just one modern touch: a high-tech home office where I could work while surrounded by memories of the grandparents who taught me that true success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. 6 months after the revelation, I gave my first public interview to Forbes. They wanted to know why I'd kept my success secret for so long. "Success is like good code," I told them. "It works best when it's clean, elegant, and doesn't draw attention to itself until the right moment." The article caused another stir in the family. Uncle James posted it on his office wall. Whether as inspiration or penance, I'm still not sure. Last week, during a family dinner now held at my house, Uncle James pulled me aside. "I was wrong," he said, the words clearly costing him. "You didn't just succeed, you revolutionized how success can look." I nodded, accepting the apology for what it was. "The family legacy was never about following one path," I replied. "It was about building something meaningful." These days, I mentor young entrepreneurs, teaching them what took me years to learn. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one building the future. Quantum Solutions continues to grow, but I still drive my Toyota to work. I still code late into the night when an idea grips me. Success didn't change who I am, it just showed others what was there all along. Yesterday, I visited my grandfather's grave, placing the Forbes magazine next to his headstone. "You always said true success leaves footprints for others to follow," I said quietly. "I hope I've made a path worth following." As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with a message. Global Dynamics wanted to double their contract. They'd need Chen Consulting's help again. Uncle James would have to sit through another meeting where his failed nephew called the shots. But this time, as I drove to the office in my deliberately modest car, I wasn't smiling because of the revenge. I was smiling because finally, after all these years, my family understood what I'd known all along. Success doesn't need to shout to be heard. The quiet ones, the ones they underestimate, are often the ones changing the world, one line of code at a time.